Hey all, XR student here. Today is a bit disappointing, but at this point, back in the past, I was super excited and motivated. A company reached out to me and asked if I could make 5 custom moths for their next holiday art show, and I was so excited because this is the first time this has ever happened where someone wanted to sell my art and advertise my art. I thought it'd be a good step in the right direction for my art career. It wasn't anything crazy big at all, but it was still something, and someone believed in me, and that was exciting enough. We signed the contracts, and I started working right away because I knew the dry time for my clay and resin was definitely cutting it close to the deadline. I wanted to make really good pieces that were better quality, better made, and more even compared to my old ones because this was the real deal. Also, I like to try learning from my art each time that I make it. So I used what I learned from my stained glass cookie video, and I made these stencils, which helped so much with keeping the shape and making the piece actually even, because I can't tell you how many times I've drawn or sculpted uneven wings. By the way, all I'm doing here is smoothing out the edges. I'm making it more rounded and then adding some fur to the body part of the moth, just to add good texture and make it look nice. I came up with this sketch to help me figure out what I wanted to create and paint on each one. Once they were all dry, it was time to actually do it. Most of these pieces I just made up designs or used old sketches to help inspire it, and the only ones that are actual moths are the Madagascar sunset one, the rainbowy one, and then the death moth with the skull on it. You'll see it later in the video. What I'm doing here is painting the main color of the moth, and I like to do that with all of my moths. Totally forgot to gesso and had to redo that because the clay or wood or canvas or whatever I'm using will definitely soak up the paint, and I didn't want that happening. Once they all were dry, I went in with some paint. I try following the colors pretty exact and the patterns as close as possible with my own little twist. I don't know, I think it's fun to paint realistic moths. And sometimes it's just nice because you don't even have to think, because you're like, oh yeah, I don't have to choose the color. The color's chosen for me. I don't have to choose the pattern. I'm not trying to think of it. It's already there. It's kind of like my own little coloring book. Now back to why they didn't want my art. So I had to sign a contract and I totally forgot to print it, and for some reason it was on a time limit, so I couldn't access the document anymore, and that's an issue because then I couldn't follow the rules properly. I also had an art market coming up and I was preparing for that as well as working on these, and then it was the holidays coming up with all the shipping time dwindling down and work time dwindling down. So I was just stressed and trying to get these pieces out and ready for this holiday market. And I truly was excited for this because I felt like these were my best pieces I've made through my moth series. The shape was better, the clay work was better, the proportions were better, the painting was better, the details, they were all new and exciting, and on top of it, someone wanted my art. So even though I thought it was the best I could do, and I thought I was presenting something that they would want, it doesn't always mean that someone actually wants it, and my best isn't what they thought my best could be. I think the biggest issue was if I printed out the contract, I would have known exactly what needed to be done. Let's put the excuses to the side, and I should have stuck to what I was supposed to do. That's my fault, and that's something that's a really hard lesson to learn and to swallow the pill of that truth, but I have to, and I have to take a look at what I've made and be proud of it. Even though it's getting denied and sent back for their good reasons. For me, they aren't good reasons, but it's not my art show. I have to look at it from their end, where they're like, okay, the chain's not glued on properly, the back isn't painted correctly, the surface doesn't look perfectly smooth. I guess if I was asking people to send an art and I got something that looked unfinished, even though to me it looks finished, like as the artist, I don't know, maybe I would send it back as well, so I can't blame them. Obviously I'm upset about it, but it is what it is. At least I created 5 really cool moths, and all of my pieces get to be on my Etsy with only me and Etsy taking a cut from it. That's it. If we look back at the moths, I love doing these little details. It really brings the piece to life because then you get to see, wow, that's exactly what that moth is. Adding a little bit of black to add that contrast really brings the moth to life if the moth has black in it. This moth is actually based off of one of my daily sketches that was based off of a butterfly my sister grew herself. And it kind of looked like a skull. I was also inspired by Jinx's butterflies in Arcane, the bomb ones. Always when the acrylics dry, I like going in with these paint markers. It's fun to add those pops of color and little details to just make something that looks kind of plain a little bit better. This moth is inspired by the night sky. I wanted a really fun, star-covered space galaxy-esque scenery and just something for the more celestial / girly customer. It's been really fun painting realistic moths. It's cool trying to color match it as well as just do layers and layers of paint and see how close you could get it to the real thing. Obviously, these aren't jumping off the paper, jumping off your wall like, oh my god, that's a real moth, but it resembles it. It has very similar patterns and colors. And to me, it's something that I'd want on my own wall. As you guys know, I love a good contrast with color, and adding this black marker to the rainbow moth was so much fun. I love adding it, the little patterns, and just getting creative and really seeing how the colors shine through under the black. Even though making all these patterns is really fun, the thing that really makes it feel like a moth to me is adding those little wing lines. Sometimes they look really good with the piece. Sometimes they're a little distracting, so it's always tricky to find the right color, especially if you're just making up a random moth. This red moth was something totally different. I did a similar pattern on my craft house that I painted, and it was fun. I feel like it's creepy and very mindless. You just keep going and going. Unfortunately, my paint marker was not having the paint surface. I made it work. I decided to add little moons and more Milky Way-esque looking things to make this a more interesting piece, because just on its own, it was too boring to me. I think now it looks very fairy-esque and pretty. I was happy with the designs. Now it's time to resin to protect the paint as well as protect the whole clay piece. I'm not a fan of resin. I'm usually mixing it incorrectly, or just the smell's gross, it takes a long time, I'm impatient, but I know what works for my pieces to make sure that they're not going to break as easily. I did go in a second time with the resin to make sure that everything was even and protected. Once it was dry, it was time to add the chains on the back. I flipped them over, and of course the magnets I used to help the dripping of the resin actually dripped onto the magnet and resined it onto the piece. But I kind of liked it because it pushed it up from the wall, so there was a little bit of distance and you could see it more. I don't know, it just looks better on the wall. Anyways, I definitely should have painted the backs of these and then maybe resined on the chains instead of crazy gluing it, but time was running out and I needed to ship it. I should have just kept it a little bit longer and fixed it, but here we are. I'm actually receiving these packages back today, so we get to look at those final shots of all these pieces. Again, I'm sad and disappointed, but I understand why they did what they did, and now I'll have them up on my Etsy shop if you guys are interested. Anyways, let's look at those close-up shots. Well, I definitely learned some lessons. Thanks for watching, guys. Here's my YouTube posting schedule, and just remember, I'm selling all of these moths on my Etsy now. And you can find updates on my Instagram. Please like, comment, follow, subscribe, whatever you want or would like to do. And I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye.